And greetings. Happy Monday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Glad to be back here in studio. Temperatures, we're running the heat overnight over at the Deace house. That's how cold it got last night. So hoping that it's safe here. We thought that a week ago at this time and would happen right as we were going on the air. Todd Herson, how are you?
I'm good.
We were invaded yet again. But hoping at least for the next couple of days with cooler temperatures that we can be in here again. Do you see something, Aaron?
No, I don't think so. I'm just going to keep looking up at the ceiling.
Because every time I see that, I get nervous. Every time I see that, I get nervous.
Just keep looking at the ceiling. I saw a little spot up there, to be serious, but I don't think it's a wasp.
All right.
I'm ready.
I know you're ready. Question is, am I ready?
No, you're never ready.
I'm not ready.
You're not.
My name is Steve Deace. In case you had forgotten, this is my studio until I was driven from my home by this invasion of killer wasps. I'm here with Todd Herson and Aaron McIntyre as well. All right, coming up on today's show, next hour, you're going to get a chance to ask me anything. I trust we have some good questions here as we head down the stretch of the election.
Yeah, this may be the deepest talent pool we've had in quite some time.
Okay. I look forward to them. Of course, you guys know the rules. No topic is off limits. Snotty questions go to the front of the line. So we look forward to those questions coming up in the next hour. At the bottom of this hour, so with the election 3 weeks from tomorrow, and we're basically voting in America everywhere now. We're essentially voting everywhere in America. The election is now, basically. It's just the majority of the people who vote won't do so until 3 weeks from tomorrow. I'm going to walk you through some important trends and angles to know about presidential elections. All right. And I think it's really important information. If nothing else, you'll win some bar bets and you'll look smart when you get together with your family. Okay. But I also think that it will help you be a discerning consumer of data and information and what trend lines and what things to look for coming up on election night 3 weeks from tomorrow. So we'll get to that at the bottom of the hour as well. But let's kick this thing off as we always do with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
Maybe. We're just not going to do this.
You
apparently.
look great, Aaron. You look great.
That was a great pose.
That
was a hell of a Lindsey Graham impersonation.
We can try this again, maybe.
What
happened while we were away? Brought to you by a body slam yesterday on a.
It's the curse of Connor Stallions.
Can you go back home?
It's me. I bring out the worst of things.
This has happened before.
Let's try take 3. And here, if this doesn't work, we're just going to go down topic by topic in Aaron's montage, and he will have to set it up for us as we discuss it.
It was a really good montage, too.
I'm sure it was. They usually are.
I may say so myself.
All right, let's try it again.
Let me try to edit. Let me try to put it back in here again. This is riveting radio. Should I do my impression of the guy sitting on the back of the truck who's never sat on a truck? I'm man enough to cook my steaks rare. Let's try this again.
It's like watching Tim Walz load a shotgun.
Brought to you by a body slam yesterday on a. It's not working, guys. Just not working.
Inexplicably. It worked before I showed up, didn't it?
It did.
It did. I want the record to show. I showed up at Kinnick Stadium on Saturday wearing a Tiger Hawk logo for the first time in my life. And their offense played their best game in 4 years. I just want the record to show that.
After I gave you crap.
Yeah, after you did. Yes. So maybe I just spent all the good fortune that I have at Kinnick Stadium.
You're not rolling with these cosmic forces far enough because they did that against the team that just beat the Wolverines the week before. So there's stuff going on here way beyond our
forces beyond that we simply cannot explain. All right. So I'm going to give Aaron a minute to gather his intel on this montage, because he's going to have to now give us an oral report.
Because he's about to snap.
And also not break my studio. Yes. Okay, that too. All right. While I tell you about our friends over at Patriot Mobile, if you are tired of supporting companies who hate you, unfortunately, we don't have a fully developed parallel economy, so you can't avoid doing that to some degree, if not many degrees, in many places in the culture. But thankfully, one place where you can is with our friends over at Patriot Mobile, with the one product that we all need nowadays, and that is our mobile phones. Make the switch today. Don't give your money directly to people who hate you anymore. Give it instead to Patriot Mobile, and they take those profits that you give them and they reinvest them back in to the values that you have in common with them. I've seen it myself. I've traveled the country. I've been to several speaking of conferences and engagements over the last couple of years, and Patriot Mobile sponsors them frequently. All right. So you get great coverage. You get a U.S.-based customer service team, which means you will actually be able to understand them. Anytime you need to switch networks within their larger meta network, you can do that for free if you're a member. And they take great care of you. They'll customize it for you. If you want to keep your phone, upgrade your phone. If you want to change a number, switch a number, they'll help you do all those things with you. And they're for you and for your values at Patriot Mobile. And you'll get a free month of service today with the offer code Steve when you go to patriotmobile.com/Steve. Again, that is patriotmobile.com/Steve, offer code Steve.
All right, should we go line by line here?
All right, let's go line by line. I led off
with the body slam that J.D. Vance had on ABC News This Week anchor Martha Raddatz, who tried to downplay the literal overrunning of apartment complexes in places like Aurora, Colorado by illegal alien gangs. J.D. Vance completely flipped the script on her, asked her, "Do you even hear yourself? You're downplaying this, saying that it's only a handful of apartment complexes, so it's not really that big of a deal," completely flipping the premise on her. That was a body slam, and that's what led off the montage.
I mean, I think J.D. Vance is just an absolute destroyer.
Well, because he understands, and this is something you've been saying, he's just doing what Republicans should have been doing to the press a long time ago.
Correct.
This isn't like the first time they got tone deaf. It's always been this simple. You just have to be willing to do it.
One of the things, we talked before, and he's still doing it, by the way. I mean, what has gone on in Florida now with Milton is just incredible. Okay, I mean, back-to-back Category 5 hurricanes, and they've already restored power to over 90% of the people in the state. I mean, it's incredible. Okay, but leading up to when he ran for president, we talked about watching Ron DeSantis was essentially broke political science. Well, Republicans can't govern efficiently. Mm-hmm. Republicans can't wield power. Republicans can't move a state or a community or a country to the right, right? He blew all of those mythologies up.
For the same reasons, you just have to be willing to do it.
Correct. And that's kind of what we learned, is it's not that they can't, it's that they won't, right?
Yes.
Right? I mean, like today, for whatever reason, Mitch McConnell's Senate Leadership Fund decided to leak out a poll today that shows it, contrary to all the momentum we are all feeling, that the Republican Party is doing bad all over America. Okay? They leak it out to the country. Somebody at the Senate Leadership Fund did. That's McConnell's group. I mean, how good and pleasant it is when we dwell together in unity with a political party like that, right? Okay? That's pretty much what the Republican Party is when it comes to governing. What we saw Trump do was break the model of how much you have to kowtow and fear the media. We saw him do that first, right? Mm-hmm. But that came with, let's face it, that came with a lot of collateral damage. Oh. And most, by the way, most ground wars do. Okay, I mean, when you're in a ground war at that level and it's on a mass scale, bad stuff's going to happen on both sides. The amount of carnage that will take place in that level of conflict, the collateral damage is going to be high. Okay.
And to be fair, we don't know if we'll be able to overcome that
to some degree,
win or lose even here. I mean it's ongoing. Even
though Trump is polling better than he ever has, his favorabilities are still somewhat underwater. They have improved, but they are still overall negative. All right. There is some level of permanent voter, and we'll find out how many of these people that still exists. There is still some level of permanent voter who in the past has voted Republican that just won't vote for him because of the collateral damage that's been done, right? And so, but that also then brought in, would it be possible to do what Trump did, but another variation that could be more disciplined, okay?
Trump, but classy.
Yes. And that's good. I like that. And of course, we're talking about a guy who grew up with a multimillionaire father, Wharton School of Business, has lived in a tower that bears his name for the last 50 years. But we're like, Trump, but classier.
Yeah.
Yes. Right. Takes a dump on a gold toilet.
Yes.
We're sitting here in a Lions warm-up jacket and a camo green sweatshirt. We're like, Trump, but classy. Yes. Which just kind of goes to show you how warped this entire thing has become.
Yes.
But that is kind of what we're describing, even if it's a fallacy. That is what a lot of, unfortunately, given the effeminate culture we're in today, okay, that is kind of what is required to some degree. All right. And then along comes J.D. Vance. Well, okay, he did it well on the attack, all right? But can you be a standard bearer when you're only on the attack? And the answer is no. You can't. You end up, your favorables become so high that you're where we were heading into the 2020 campaign, okay? But then he had the vice presidential debate, which showed, he's got... He doesn't. This isn't just Randy Johnson just throwing 95-mile-an-hour fastballs high and tight like Trump, and he doesn't know where it's going either. Okay, now this is Randy Johnson, where he's got that sweeping curveball too. He can throw that thing over the plate as well, right? Okay,
yes.
So at the VP debate, he showed I've got another speed here. I can be relatable. I can be engaging. Okay. It doesn't have to just be strict attack mode the entire time. Okay.
And I don't think that's an electoral ploy either. It's organic because of how he was raised and what he's seen.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And it's also clear, though, he's honed it, and he should.
Yeah.
This is a job. It's a vocation like anything else, right? Just like you'd want your preacher practicing how to read an audience and give a good sermon. You'd want, your stock advisor to have a track record of proven success of where he's learned from his mistakes, right? I mean, this is a stock and trade like anything else. It's a vocation. It's also very clear that he has honed it. Because he can deliver it in ways where it doesn't come across as phony or contrived, but that's what relatable means, right? And you see the best of both of those worlds. He refers to her by her first name. He's almost like, by golly, I can't even believe this, okay? But then he just absolutely devastates her. If the guy in Florida is a governing machine, the guy from Ohio here is a messaging machine. I mean, he is watching Ron DeSantis is literally like watching a political science class, a political science curriculum be terraformed in real time based on his exploits. Watching what J.D. Vance does is like watching a communications class or a messaging strategy class being conducted and terraformed in real time with him basically as the fulcrum of the curriculum.
In some ways, he's the new Machiavelli. He's like writing the book on how to do politics.
Mm-hmm.
If you really want to get things done, but with ethics, with the conscience, it's go time.
And you can tell Martha Raddatz is not accustomed to that type of pushback, completely destroying the premise that she was working from, because later on she basically agreed with him, the points that he was trying to make. We do have the montage. We can pick it up right back after that clip. So here is the rest of the montage, hopefully. That didn't go well for anchor Martha. Speaking of things that did not go well, Democrat VP hopeful Tim Walz tried to go pheasant hunting.
And James was rubbish with a shotgun.
Whoa! Whoops, wrong clip.
Yeah. That's my theory. And it never fits quite right. Never fits quite right. Just not quite right. How do you give it back?
Governor, what kind of gun is it?
This is a Beretta A400. I bought it when
Michael Strahan on ABC News asked Walz about his contention we need to do away with the Electoral College.
Well, it's not the campaign's position. And the point I'm trying to make is that there's folks that feel every vote must count in every state. And I think some of folks feel that's not the case. Our campaign does that. And the point I'm saying is I'm in 5 states in 2 days. We're out there making the case that the campaign's position is clear, that that's not their position. Their position and my position is to make sure that everybody understands their vote, no matter what state they're in, matters.
So that's something that you and Vice President Harris disagree on?
I have spoken about it in the past that she's been very clear on this, and the campaign, and my position is the campaign's position.
The Kamala campaign is trying hard to target men. Here's actress Jennifer Garner.
Listen, I know you've knocked, and I know you've called and called. I know you've given, and you're worn out. But the truth is, you are the front lines. This is it. I mean, I'm looking at these beautiful faces, these women, and these strong men. God, is there anything sexier than a man who is like men for Kamala?
And here's that TikTok featuring, allegedly, a number of homosexual actors.
I'm a man. I'm a man.
I'm a man, man.
And I'm man enough.
I'm man enough to enjoy a barrel-proof bourbon.
Neat. Man enough to cook my steak rare. I'll tell you another thing I sure as shit am not afraid of. Women. Woman wants to be president? Well, I hope she has the guts to look me right in the eye and accept my full-throated endorsement.
Checking in on Kamala herself.
Joy cometh in the morning. So when we think about what's at stake in this election, whoa, it's packed with some stuff. It's packed with some fundamental stuff. I say rather articulately.
Learning Chinese today. Today's phrase is, the best case scenario is that she's drunk.
最好的情况就是她喝醉了。
The Kamala Department of Justice is suing the state of Virginia for removing people who cannot legally vote from their voting rolls. That's it. That's the story. The DOJ doesn't want people removed from Virginia voting rolls who can't even legally vote. Happy Columbus Day, especially to Elizabeth Warren, but especially not to Kamala Harris, who had this to say just a couple of years ago.
It is an honor, of course, to be with you this week as we celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day. The United States has recognized the voyage of the European explorers who first landed on the shores of the Americas. But that is not the whole story. That has never been the whole story. Those explorers ushered in a wave of devastation for tribal nations, perpetrating violence, stealing land, and spreading disease. We must not shy away from this shameful past.
That thing the experts said never happens actually happened again as Blair Fleming, the dude who feels pretty, who plays on the women's volleyball team at San Jose State University, spiked the volleyball right in the face of a player from San Diego State University last week. That player is reportedly, thankfully, okay. And finally, a very old-looking Democrat shows up to a McDonald's in Georgia. Here's what happened next. For those of you listening, Bill Clinton approaches the cash register at a McDonald's. The cashier says, "Are you Joe, Mr. Joe?" before Clinton reminds her who he is. And that's what happened while we were away.
God.
The Tim Walz stuff with the shotgun, is that Michael Dukakis in a tank bat?
It's really, really bad.
As in the kind of thing that when momentum is against you, is it like one of those crystallized moments that people will remember for years?
No.
That they will, like, after the fact, that's when we kind of knew you were screwed. Okay.
The only people like us, we just don't live in those times anymore. Like that, because we move on so quickly and like that, but people like us will remember. And if it goes the way that we think it might be going, we'll understand it. I'm just saying people don't think that way anymore. And I wish they did.
So let's let the show in. Let's let the audience in on some of the inside baseball here on the show behind the scenes, because I think it'll give them an idea of why I'm about to say what I'm going to say afterwards, right? So our buddy Bob Vanderplatz is off this week, and we were looking to see. We had a couple of people that we thought of. They just weren't available today, but we tried to come up with somebody that could come on and give us some really good data analysis. That we didn't think would jerk our chain with one, grifty narrative versus the other, right? And we came up with a few names. I want to make it like there was nobody out there. We came up with a few names, but it just on the shorter notice of availability, with Bob not finding out yet last night Bob wasn't going to be here, we just weren't able to do it, right? And so I just decided to do it myself, basically. That's what we're going to do here at the bottom of the hour. I bring that up because I don't know how much. As I said a couple times last week, I don't know how much we're going to be able to rely on really solid data out there. And
yeah, you do. We won't.
And more than ever before, I do think we have to, anytime we look at a piece of data, I think we have to filter it through through an instinctive filter. Okay? Like, before there were mask studies, okay, or before we had and several countries did do mask studies and found they didn't work. And before we had governors like DeSantis who were willing to actually look at what masks did in his own state and tell the truth about it when most were not, okay, we instinctively were in a position without that data yet where we had to just ask simple questions, which were, if masks worked, why haven't we worn these because I used to remember we used to bring this up. Before we had the data, we would ask questions like, if masks worked, why didn't, against aerosolized viruses, okay? And then why didn't we wear masks all our lives, every cold and flu season since the Spanish flu 100 years ago, right? A good instinctive question.
This
Fair?
is exactly what I'm talking about. It's called common sense, which is why I just don't think the walls thing will quite have the legs in terms of only because we don't have common sense, like you are illustrating.
Now the good thing is there's numerous walls things. He keeps providing them.
Agreed.
But there may not be a signature one like a Dukakis in a tank.
My only point,
it might be death by 1,000 paper cuts fair because he keeps feeding the viral machine. Yeah,
for sure.
Okay, so another question that we kept asking before we could find out, as we're looking in real time at Wisconsin holding an open election, okay, and comparing Michigan and Sweden, but we had some very limited data. So we kept asking questions all the time, like, what about natural immunity? Okay. I mean, because we had no idea they were going to roll out a vaccine in a year. I don't think even you thought they would do it that fast, and you were pretty confident they'd come up with some scam eventually, but within a calendar year.
Agreed.
Okay. And so we were looking at the possibility in March and April of this just going on and on and on and on and on. Well, at some point we need to, get to natural immunity to push back against the virus, and we're taking natural immunity off the board. Why are we doing that, right? The question I asked last week about global warming, if Marjorie Taylor Greene is wrong and we are unable to control the weather, as everybody laughing at her says, okay, if we're unable to control the weather, do you know why we're spending gazillions of dollars on trying to control the weather?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
All right, so there are instinctive questions that you can ask before you even have data, or in case data never even becomes available to you that is trustworthy, that just instinctively gets to the heart of the matter, which is a fancy way to say what Todd just expressed, common sense, right?
Yes.
All right. We're sitting here 21 days out, and the fact that the Democrats believe, I mean, we can't know their plight better than they know it, right? We couldn't presume to know what they think the winning strategy is for them better than they do. We wouldn't have better assumptions, data, knowledge, instincts about their own side than we would, that they would, right? We have to assume that they know their path better than we do, right? With that being said, we're sitting here 3 weeks out, and the overt appeal to men. Never seen this from the Democratic Party in my entire life. Anything like this. Now, it is one cringy ass appeal, okay? But here's the thing that also I think will reinforce what I'm saying here. The kinds of men that won't find what they're doing cringy, they already have those men. You see what I'm saying? Those men are already in the fold. The kinds of men that are like, wow, I guess I'm not shocked that a 700-pound actor, and couldn't get any other work, so he had to do Kamala's ad. Okay, I mean the kinds of men that won't find the things they're doing right now. Where Tim Walz's shotgun literally needs a blue pill. Okay, they already have all those men. They're already in the fold. They're probably voting for them right now. They're clearly trying to appeal to a more traditional definition of men. Why?
Who has huge podcasts that are filled with an audience of mostly men? Probably a lot of independent men.
Mm-hmm. Joe Rogan.
Yep. Theo Vaughn.
Yep.
Andrew Schultz.
Several. The latter two, Trump's already been on those podcasts.
Correct.
Now there's talk about him going on Rogan too.
Yep.
That's an interesting analysis that you have there. So yeah.
So for all of the talk about getting the brothers to flip, Jamal and Jose, it seems like the Trump campaign with their targets in terms of these sit-down interviews actually does see their path, and it's through men.
For example, just before you just let me give you some added ammo here. This from CNN. And their data analyst guy, Harry Anton, I think is his name, he actually seems to be pretty good. I wouldn't put him on our show just because he works for CNN. All right. But by the standards of what we've come to expect from CNN, I don't trust him, but I don't how about he's an old-fashioned biased journalist, but I don't think it's malfeasant. Is that? I don't even know how to describe this anymore.
There's a chance.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right. I mean, there's some level of objectivity from him. Okay.
Let's
some
pretend.
Level. Okay, or we can pretend. All right. But just in the last hour on CNN, he pointed out that according to their polling, all right, Kamala Harris's margin with black men, Barack Obama was plus 81 points heading into the 2008 election, according to their polling. Hillary Clinton was plus 63 points, according to their polling in 2016. Joe Biden was plus 53 points. Now, that's a trend line, by the way, there. Okay. Plus 53 points, according to their polling heading into 2020. Kamala plus 41 points. They clearly believe they're behaving anyway, as if they have a problem with men.
Well, they should.
Yeah, here's
it only took them a decade plus.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's that. The trend line's always been going that way. But here's the reality of 4 years ago, the fog of COVID. Use the definitions as loosely, like Steve just kind of did with journalists. There were a lot of men who aren't like yay woke. They've probably been winnowed down a little bit more than they would care to admit or even understand. But ultimately, within COVID, protecting, voting against Donald Trump, they probably did things instinctively without understanding. I'm making a man vote here. Because I'm protecting somehow. We're going to go down a different road. That's not there anymore. Mm-hmm. There's no fog. It is way more overt. This Kamala stuff is insane. They reel against that. But on the other side, there's Trump derangement syndrome. And listen, as bad as that, as cringy as that commercial was, it's actually more authentic than Kamala is herself, which is insane, but it's true. So now men are like, they can't kind of wink and nod to themselves anymore with COVID. It's not there to run cover for them. There's just a stark choice now.
I think a more refined way of looking at this, if I can say refined in this environment, is I don't think the man vote even exists anymore. I think they're having problems with the bro vote, if you get my
and that's where the
distinction.
These ads are actually for black men specifically, is what you're thinking.
Just the bro vote.
Okay.
Just bros, like Bart, who listens to
like
Barstool.
bro dudes.
Yeah, like
not
bro
just
dude.
the brothers be flipping, but like bro dudes.
Yes.
Okay. Like Jason Momoa, types, and John or Joe Rogan listeners. That kind of bro dude. Okay.
Same point. They're waking up enough. They can't just be in the fog of COVID. They're just on the edge of I know I don't stand for much or anything like this, but she's not cutting it for me. Mm-hmm. I think Aaron is right over the target. Am I right, Aaron?
Correct. Yes. There's a difference between a man and a bro.
For sure.
I mean, if you looked at just the behavior of the two campaigns here at this juncture, who would you think is ahead and who would you think is behind? Looking at the behavior of the campaigns. If it has nothing
to do with the margin of cheating, it's Trump ahead.
Correct.
I agree. And they are behaving as if they are a campaign that's behind. I mean, they just announced 10 minutes ago she's going to sit down and do an interview with Fox News on Wednesday. Kamala is. They just announced this 10 minutes ago. That
Walz
is not a move of we can hide
Yes.
and just print and harvest ballots. That's not a move of that.
And Walz has been on Fox the last 2 weekends too.
Yep. All right, so let's look ahead on what we need to be looking for come election night. All right, we're going to help you separate some fact from fiction and look at some trends and angles heading into the crucial 2024 election here next. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, we are powered by our friends over at realestateagentsitrust.com. In these unprecedented times,
Bing, bing, bing.
Make sure, even if you're going to try to take advantage of this phony baloney rate cut they're doing to try to carry Kamala's carcass across the finish line, make sure you do not venture into the Let's Go Brandon real estate market without an agent that you can trust. And we made it so easy for you to find them. We named the place realestateagentsitrust.com. And a lot of times these agents come from right here in the Blaze audience, so they have the same value system as you do. And we always make sure that they have a verified track record of success. Otherwise, we don't recommend them to you. All right. So whether you want to move across town or across the country, wherever you need to go, wherever you want to go, we'll get you the win that you need and you want with an agent you can trust at realestateagentsitrust.com. Again, that's realestateagentsitrust.com. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show alongside Todd Erzen and Aaron McIntyre. I am Steve Deace, and tomorrow it is 3 weeks until the 2024 election, but we are essentially voting everywhere in America now as we speak. So let's kind of lay out some trends and angles. Like when you go to the stadium for a game, you still get the program, you can tell who the players are, key facts, stats, things of that nature. They don't necessarily predict the outcome for you, but they make sure that you are very informed and aware so that you're not always necessarily surprised by what happens, right? View this as kind of that. I'm going to be very hesitant unless we continue to see, or unless we get to see, margin outside of an polling outside of an MOC. I'm going to be really hesitant to make a lot of grand predictions about this election. Okay.
The gun is here to enforce that.
But here are, I think, some things that will make you a better consumer of information. All right. And a smarter citizen. 15 things you need to know heading into the 2024 election. Let's start with number 1. Since Gallup began tracking whether people believe the country is on the right-wrong track in 1979, the incumbent party has never won back the White House with a sub-40% right track metric. In September, only 22% told Gallup they thought the country was on the right track. Now, they will update it here heading into November for October at some point, but I can't imagine it's going to be an 18-point swing, all right? So it's very likely the Democrats are going to have to run against this metric, which has been a foolproof, fail-safe so far in every election since it existed.
Have they met 2024 fools yet?
This is honestly,
and I'm not trying to be glib.
I hear you.
I'm reflecting. I don't want to put any stock. I don't want to put anything in the barrel of being a sure thing right now. Basically, I don't want to put anything in that. It's a good factoid, but I'm kind of schizophrenic when it comes to this electorate.
This shouldn't even be a segment we're doing. That should be it. But 2022 happened, and It was the same, based on the same principle. Like you should not.
It wasn't as low as it is now, but we were under 40% of the people thought we were on the right track. That is true. Okay, 22%, man. That's That's I mean, that is, when did the dust storms and the margin calls on Wall Street start? Okay. Number 2, not since 1980 have we had a presidential election with more men voting than women, and that was just men plus 2 of the overall electorate. In the last 10 presidential elections, the average overall turnout of the general electorate has been women plus 4.8. Interestingly, though, the 2004 presidential election had the widest turnout gender gap ever recorded. That was women plus 8. Or no, plus 9. Women were plus 9 in that election, and George W. Bush was reelected. All right, so it was women 53, men 44 in the 2004 election, and George W. Bush was reelected with that size turnout of a gender gap.
what we were talking about earlier about the bros and how they may vote, men who tend to vote or have voted in the past, I can see them swinging. I'm not very confident that the gap here so more men in the pool, I think they've selected themselves out of this whole game called being a citizen a while ago. I'm not confident that gap is going to close a lot.
At the very least, go back to what we said a few minutes ago, that they think they have a trouble with men. And keep in mind, they've made this entire election on their side about killing babies to women. That indicates that there's enough of a gender gap going the other way that they are worried it would make up for the gender gap they're probably going to win on the side of women. At the very least, I think it indicates that. Okay. Number 3. Since exit polling as we've known it began in 1976, there has never been a presidential electorate when more Republicans voted than Democrats. The closest was 38-38 in 2004, which not coincidentally was the only time so far this century that Republicans have won the overall popular vote. So polls, even when they're being honest, always oversample Democrats for a reason, right? Don't fall into the skewed polls narrative. That's just kind of our own side's version of a grift angle. That doesn't mean, by the way, you should not, like the whole Nate Silver thing, don't look at the crosstab internals of polls. That's a little bit like, don't read my study on masks and jabs and lockdowns. Just read that. Yes. He calls them truthers,
yes.
Right? I mean, the math should add up, okay? The math should add up, all right? When you look at the crosstabs, because those are the conclusions that the pollster is making in what they're weighting. However, well, of course the Democrats are ahead. They've got a +7 overall women electorate. Well, we've had +7 overall women electorates, actually. So, I mean, that is something to understand. And we always have more Democrats vote more than Republicans as well.
Was it Pew or Gallup last month that showed it was either tied in terms of party ID, tied for the first time in September since they started tracking
Gallup had that.
Gallup had that. Yep. And I believe it was either Pew or Gallup again just last month that had Democrat enthusiasm at its highest level since 2008.
I don't know how those two things could be simultaneously true, but that is schizophrenic. It was Gallup both. Gallup had Democrats with a huge enthusiasm gap, and in August, and then in September had Republicans with a massive registration surge. That's one of the reasons I'm going to be very hesitant to make wide sweeping predictions about this outcome. A universe where those two things can happen, and those two polls, by the way, are amongst the most reliable. Those are from Gallup, the OG. They're the most, probably the two most reliable election polls we have in American history are the Party ID and Party Enthusiasm by Gallup.
I just think there's enough Christian Republicans who are saying, I'm out, but there's no way to change this, which is not to say there's no way for Trump to win it. That just depends on the margin. But I don't know how suddenly we could have more Republicans voting than Democrats unless something changes big in the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, it would be the first time ever. Number 4, since exit polling began in 1976, only Mitt Romney 2012 won independents and still lost the election.
I'm not going to base any thinking or projection about anything on the man that is Mitt Romney. I refuse to do it.
I saw a post yesterday saying one of the biggest drawbacks of the era of Trump is that there's no longer a conservative party.
When did this party exist? Exactly. Number 5. Since Roe v. Wade, every presidential candidate that won the Catholic vote but one has won the presidential election. The lone exception was in 2000 when Al Gore narrowly won them, and he won them by like a point, but then lost. However, that was also the first presidential election since 1888 when the winner didn't win the popular vote. So it was a bit of an outlier there. Okay, so I'll let you address this one specifically. This is your tribe.
Back in the day during the primaries, and I was talking about how evangelicals, what about Catholics? No, right now. And I told you then, and I'll tell you, now is the time we talk about Catholics. Absolutely. And Steve, rightly so, and he's getting some pushback. No. He's well, first, he's not Catholic, so it doesn't surprise him he doesn't think Catholic things about the church in certain respects. But like, if the Catholic Church can't sort through this morass on Kamala, and the way Steve put on his tweet, how we might have to put you
on
say
Columbus Day. I mean,
yes.
if Jezebel's standing up there saying Christopher Columbus, that Apocalypto had the wrong plot line, okay, that the Aztecs were the good guys,
right.
okay, that the Aztecs were the good guys here, okay, and can say that out loud on Columbus Day and still get even get 45% of the Catholic vote. At that time, I'm calling for a complete shutdown of Catholicism until we can find out when the Sam Hill is going wrong.
And my response to that was tough but fair, because come on, folks, be real. You can't. You have to have prudential judgment as a Catholic, and if you can't do that, Steve's saying that's a you problem, and he's not wrong.
Number 6. Since 1980, the Hispanic vote has increased 550%, from 2% in 1980 to 13% of the electorate in 2020. The closest gap for the Hispanic vote was 2004, when John Kerry beat W by just 9, 53 to 44. Only 4 of the top 10 states for Hispanic population, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Michigan, and Georgia, are considered competitive this cycle. Trump has lost Hispanics by an average of 35.5 points in his previous 2 campaigns.
Again.
The Hispanic vote is so Gollum-esque. It isn't just one thing. There are genuine patriots within the Hispanic vote, and then there are just workers who want the job or don't want to be deported. And I don't know what the Hispanic vote is, and I'm not going to presume to even try.
I think we're going to get a good idea of where it's going in this election moving forward. I do. I mean, we have J.D. Vance openly out there saying, hey, if you're here in this country illegally, pack your bags. Just said that on Sunday, all right? So they're not, for all the softness that the Trump-Vance ticket is doing on abortion, they are not doing that on deportations at all. Yeah. At all, okay? So we'll get an idea now, all right? Number 7, since 1980, the black vote, though, has only increased by 30%. It was 10% of the electorate in 1980. It was 13% of the electorate in 2020. The best any GOP nominee has done with the black vote during that span was around the 13%, if you round it up, around the 13% that Trump received in 2020, when he also received 18% of the black male vote.
I think he's definitely going to do better with the black vote, but your analysis back months, if not a year ago, about it depends on where the black vote is.
Correct. If it's in New York.
Yeah, if he's doing better with blacks in Mississippi, it doesn't make a difference. Yes. If he's doing better with blacks in Alabama and South Carolina, it doesn't make a difference.
If he's doing better with blacks in New York, it doesn't make a difference.
It makes a difference. Doing better with blacks in Illinois makes a difference, right? Yes. Okay. Doing better with blacks in Michigan, that would make a difference. Yes. But what we found, for example, when you look at I think Daniel Horowitz looked at the precinct level data for black voters and basically found that almost all of Trump's growth with black voters in 2020 came from like Mississippi, South Carolina. So good old boys. They're just black. You know what I'm saying? They're the guys that are saying, like that one black guy, that video that went viral before the Rose Bowl last year. I don't give a piss about anything but the Tide. I mean, he's winning those guys. That's great. Their votes count too, but it's not the same as a black voter in Wayne County, Michigan, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Number 8. Since exit polling began in 1976, Obama 2012 was the only presidential campaign to lose the suburbs but win the election. Now, he lost them by 1 point, but he did lose the suburbs and still win the election. That's the only time that's happened.
Love me some Mitt Romney.
Yeah, Mitt Romney did a great job of depressing the turnout of his own base. It worked. That's why we keep that. Why, for those of you wondering why have we said for 10 years if Mitt Romney just eaten a chicken sandwich, he would have been president. This data, won the suburbs, won independents, wouldn't eat a chicken sandwich. He got 4 million less votes, white voters, than John McCain got as a result. So there you go. Number 9. No Republican has won the youth vote since George Herbert Walker Bush in 1988. I'm putting that in there because there's been some polling that shows Trump may dramatically do better with the youth vote. We'll see. But the Republicans haven't won it since 1988.
In both cases, there's a comfort. Very comfortable youth are going to vote Democrats. Very comfortable suburbanites are going to vote If they're waking up a little bit, they're going to put their Trump derangement aside. Both of these are comfort factors in my estimation.
10, the dominant 3 Rust Belt states, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, have each voted as a block in every presidential election since 1988. They have all voted together since 1988.
This, along with 2022, just is what scares the hell out of me more than anything else. They're tied together, and look how they voted for governor against, when there's been reasons not to vote for who they voted for, and look what they did. See, this is why trying to predict things like this. You're asking people who did an insane thing in recent memory to flip
turn around and then undo
in mass.
It. Yeah, I know. Number 11, from 1980 to 2016, 19 bellwether counties determined the presidential election winner, meaning every winner won a majority of these counties. However, Joe Biden was able to, quote, win in 2020, despite only winning one of them, Clallam County in Washington State, where Democrats win anyway.
That's a yo.
That is a yo. That, to me, that's one of the best prima facie pieces of evidence against the integrity of what happened in 2020. Is that stat right there?
Same thing, yes.
Yeah. Number 12, we have no control group along those same lines. Pay very close attention to this one, please. We have no control group to measure mail-in voting trends by. We did not have mass mail-in voting nationwide until 2020, and that was when most of the country was still shut down to some degree. So do not get emotionally attached to trend lines on that either way this cycle. They might be relevant, but we don't know. This cycle will determine what the trend lines for mail-in voting are, but we don't have the same situation for mail-in voting that ever existed like it did in 2020. So we don't know. We just simply don't know. Number 13, Joe Biden is only the second presidential candidate to lose both Florida and Ohio and win the White House. JFK 1960, another very controversial election where there's a lot of folklore and mythology that his pops basically bought off the mob in Illinois to flip that state to JFK. Okay. Number 14. Mitt Romney, 2012, received almost the same percentage of white evangelical voters, 79%, as Donald Trump 2016 did, and when he got 80%. However, Trump received 5 more points of overall turnout. White evangelicals were 21% of the electorate in 2012. That's a typo there by me, sorry. But they were 26% of the electorate in 2020. White evangelicals in 2016, I should say. White evangelicals then increased their turnout in 2020 to 28% of the electorate, but Trump's share of them dropped to 76%.
Well, I said earlier, I don't expect. That's an issue in this election. White evangelicals, many of them are promising they're not voting for Donald Trump now. We'll see if that stands in 3 weeks.
I don't like this trend line overall. Dropping the share.
Yeah.
But the turnout went up.
Yes.
Okay. So here's what that means. What it means is, with that increased turnout, if Trump had done the same with white evangelicals that he did in 2016, he would have won outside the margin of cheating, is what that means.
Yeah.
He would have essentially had the exact same win, but even by larger margins than what he had. Instead of winning the most decisive states by 80,000 votes, he probably wins them by a couple 100,000 votes. But it's the same decisive electoral college win. All right, that leaves us with one more factoid. One more. We'll get to that, and then we'll get to your questions on an Ask Me Anything Monday next. Back here on the Steve Deace Show, Hour 2 is underway here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Aaron McIntyre and Todd Erzin. I'm Steve Deace. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox, which you can take advantage of by emailing us, steve@stevedeace.com. You can also like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Getter, Instagram, and TikTok. And then if you don't mind, please also subscribe to our new YouTube channel, at Deace Show on YouTube. That's at Deace Show on YouTube. We're trying to start all over there because of all the censorship we have faced there. You can also, if you like the podcast version, hit subscribe, or if you're on iTunes, follow. You can also leave us a 5-star review, and many of you have, so keep those coming. We appreciate each and every one of those as well. We have a unique opportunity right now to make a huge difference in the Holy Land, and you can be a part of that by aligning with our good friends at Voice of Judah Israel. It's a messianic ministry focused in the heartland of Israel. They do, first of all, help to meet the material needs of the Jewish people. They do all kinds of humanitarian work there on behalf of the Messiah there for the people of Israel as well. But then they also preach and teach. They build churches. They plant churches. They teach the gospel. That's what makes them a messianic ministry. It's just not a bunch of do-gooderism. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but there has to be something more than that, and they do the more than that. All right, and so this is what they want to do. They don't just want to bless the Jewish people with support from Christians, but they want to bless them with the greatest story ever told, and that is their Messiah, the world, and our Messiah as well. So the harvest is plenty there in Israel, but the workers are few. If you want to be one of them and learn more about how you can partner and assist this inspiring work, blessing the nation of Israel, go to vojisrael.org/Steve. That's vojisrael.org/Steve. All right, we've got one more trend and angle for this upcoming election, and there's a reason why it's number one. The two bookends here, okay? The Gallup one that we led off with is kind of the OG trend line. If you're the party in power and you're under 40% on right track, you've never won before. All right. And right now, this regime is at 22% on right track. All right. So they're halvesies at 40, halvesies of 40 right now. All right. But I think given some of the demographic shifts, right, just like there was the such thing as the Reagan Democrat. Okay, and the kind of person that was socially conservative and voted Republican, a lot of times they were in the South for the first time, for example, and then stayed native to the Republican Party. We have seen some of that shifting in the Trump era, where Trump has really grown the GOP presence in rural states, which for a state like where we live in Iowa has been a huge boon to helping us turn the state red. On the other hand, he has turned off suburban voters at a rate that a Republican never has before, which has made states like North Carolina and Georgia and Arizona that are heavily suburban, has made those states more competitive for Democrats than they previously were as well. So along the same lines here, this is the final trend and angle I want us to address. Trump is the worst performing Republican presidential nominee with white college graduates. He won them by only 3 in 2016. That was the smallest margin on record ever for a Republican, and then became the first Republican to ever lose them by 3. He lost them by 3, but he's the first Republican that ever lost them in 2020. So how he performs with this demographic may go a long way towards determining the outcome of this election. And let me add just one more corollary here. Scott Rasmussen, not to be confused with Rasmussen Polling again, he sold that many years ago, but now he's back and doing his own polling. I saw him post this morning that all of his trend lines right now, doesn't mean Trump's winning them all, okay? But that all of his trend lines, except for one, have tilted towards Trump. Meaning even in demographics like with women he was losing, at least he's gaining some ground, okay? But this has been true except for one demographic. Whites with postgraduate degrees, okay? And that his gap with whites with postgraduate degrees has actually only grown. And he even thinks it's even possible that the size of that gap may be the final determining subgroup of this election. Okay, so that's the final data point. Your thoughts on that, and then on the list as a whole before we move on.
Yeah, I don't know on this one if COVID, January 6th, Trump's persona, if it all just combined into a fog of war where that group of people did what it did, kind of trust the experts sort of stuff. So if it's a kind of a unique moment in time and thus somewhat of an outlier in terms of its strength and intensity, and we're going to put that aside, or if it kind of reset or catapulted ahead the trend line of where things were going and now made it permanent. And we're going to find out. Because these bookends you're talking about, if we find out and it goes the way where the Trump Republicans, et cetera, don't lose this thing, Like everything needs to be cast aside that we know for sure about how we did politics in the past other than the gospel. I mean, really, we will know nothing.
Are we talking about grads or post-grads?
In this case, just college grads at all.
College grads.
Scott Rasmussen brought up postgraduates specifically.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, I think we need to look at things, and I'm not trying to say this to be optimistic. I'm trying to say this to be objective as possible. Until we have reason to remove it out of one-off or just an incidental category, we need to put it there, or to leave it there. In 2020, losing them for the first time, the trend line was not great, but it's still a one-off. And I'm not saying that just to be Pollyanna.
Because of all the mail-in voting, we don't know.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
I think that's totally fine.
So I think we still need to keep it in that category until we have coincidence and then a trend with another election cycle. So I'm still leaving this in kind of the one-off category.
And also, this group, they are the quintessential too smart by half group, and that's part of what being educated has done. To me, this mimics the transgender issue. If they are capable, and book bans, if they're capable of coming down on, okay, we're cutting up kids, we're putting porn on the schools, what are we doing? That doesn't mean suddenly they become, door-knocking evangelicals, but they're just like, this is nuts. But if they're the kind that actually has been convinced, like, we should not ban books. Really? You never thought we should ban books that have porn in them? But if they're just like, if they're hoodwinked by the, no, I don't think we should have, freedom is not banning books, then we're screwed, because they've just drunk the Kool-Aid from the fire hose exactly the way they've been designed to for a long time now.
One last thing on your point, Aaron, because I think it's a real good one about looking at 2020 as any kind of a specific outline other than Biden only winning one of the bellwether counties, and it's in a state Republicans can't ever win, okay, because of the mass mail-in voting there. You're right. So let's go back to 2016. I just went and looked. White college graduates made up 37% of the electorate in 2016. Whites with no college degree made up 34% of the electorate in 2016. So it is quite possible that it won't necessarily be how Trump performs overall with this group that could determine things, but what is the turnout margins of that group? Okay. And then how does Trump do with non-white college or non-whites without college degrees? Okay. So in 2016, they were 16% of the electorate. All right. We're non-whites with no college degree. We're 16% of the electorate. Trump lost them to Hillary by 56. Could he only lose them by, say, 46 this time, right? 40. But I absolutely, and the one predictive metric I have made, and all that I went through, and everything I went through in this exercise to put this guide together for us to discuss today, everything I went through reinforced what I said about a week or two ago on the show. When this is all said and done on election night, I think we're going to probably look at what was the size of gender gap for men at the same time as the women, because I think they're going to simultaneously be massive, maybe the most we've ever seen, okay? And then number two, how many white college graduates voted and how many non-white college graduates voted, okay? Could ultimately be when we look at this thing and we reverse engineer it. Okay, well, how did this outcome happen? I'm not willing to make a bunch of grand pronouncements predicting the election, but I am willing to make a couple of grand pronouncements about what I think will be why the election turned out the way it did. And I think those two trend lines are going to be among them.
This kind of goes back to the hypothesis that I laid out on Friday, that when it comes to the left, it's the Democrat machine mixed in with every single cultural institution of importance. I have to think, unless maybe you disagree, but haven't they reached their ceiling with defining Donald Trump?
You would think, which is why they've resorted to killing him. There's nothing left to do other than kill the guy.
And you have to look back at, if you're a programmed leftist, you're going to vote no matter what. But I'm just talking about kind of the mushy middle, I guess.
The
normie.
I mean, how much is the normie willing to say, okay, I'll tolerate a few more years of mean tweets because we just can't do this anymore.
See, and I just don't know what I tend to think that maybe they've reached a point of diminishing returns where they may not vote for Donald Trump, but what has Kamala given you to vote for? They might just sit out. I don't know that, and I don't know what a normie is anymore. But my hypothesis is that they've kind of reached their zenith, their ceiling of defining who this guy is. In other words, they've reached their ceiling of votes against somebody. They've reached their ceiling of people who are going to go out to vote against Donald Trump. I have to think that that's the case, but we'll find out.
All right. Are we ready for some Ask Me Anything?
Yes.
All right. Todd has selected the questions. None of them I have seen. Aaron has actually, I'm going to see them for the first time when Aaron rolls them out. So let's get to it. Time for you guys to ask me anything. No topic is off limits. Questions this week came from our friends and followers over on Facebook, Aaron.
Yeah, we'll start with this very thoughtful question from Timothy Kirkpatrick, who says, in 3 weeks when your cult leader loses, do you and Glenn revert back to legitimate conservatives, or do you rats sink with the ship?
Yeah, I got to tell you guys, number one, I don't work for Glenn Beck. Number one. The idea, first of all, I don't work for anybody.
Or actually, do you?
I don't. I own the show. All right. I mean, the Blaze gets to decide whether they want to carry it, but this isn't like, if I'm Kelsey Grammer and I'm the star of Frasier, and NBC cancels the show and owns the rights to the show, there isn't any more Frasier. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Okay. That's not how this works. I mean, the Blaze gets to decide if they want to carry me or not, but they have no say over whether I do a show. They just have a say whether or not the show appears on their network. So I'm not their employee. I don't work for them. I own the show. I haven't been anybody's employee other than my own company's for 14 years. So, or almost 14 years. It'll be 14 years in February. So you guys just, I see these in my feed sometimes. A few of you go here. It just makes me laugh. This couldn't be further from the truth. Number two, if you've known Glenn Beck at all, he takes great pride in giving people and encouraging people's independence in airing their views.
That's just what a grifter would say.
All right. So it's just not even in Glenn's it's not even in Glenn's makeup to be that level of heavy-handed, even if he had that kind of influence over our show, and he doesn't. But it would not be in Glenn's makeup to do that, nevertheless. And I want to know on these. I guess I voted for Romney, I voted for McCain, I voted for the two Bushes, but the guy who did more for me than any of those guys did when they had the chance or ever even promised to do, and then went back to the Senate and kept stabbing me in the back all the more. I don't understand this one. I mean, I really don't get this one. I don't. And you know what? I don't want to get it. It's just a level of idolatry I don't want. Like Aaron, I think you made a Freudian slip there when you played the wrong wipe at the start of the Ask Me Anything. You put the idolatry.
I did the idolatry or not. Did I do that?
Yes, but it actually ended up being perfect for the first question that we had. Yeah, there's one of us has let Donald Trump break his brain. The other one is named Steve.
Sorry about that. I'm a little fuzzy today.
Go ahead.
That and the technology is a little fuzzy too. Diane Thigpen Little says, have you seen Superman, the Christopher Reeves story? Was it good?
I have not. It was showing here as a Fathom event. The one night I could go, we had small group, and I just made the decision to go to our small group instead. So when it eventually reaches digital, I hope to be able to watch it, but I've not been able to see it yet.
Next, we go to Elaine Candace, who says, my pastor has said he's a one-issue voter. Fortunately, it's the life issue. Given the fact no candidate is pro-life, how would you suggest going about having a respectful confrontation to persuade him and others like him to vote?
Well, number one, let me give a just to show you, I'm not letting anybody break my brain. So let me give you a defense of one-issue voters, which I've done many, many times. We're all one-issue voters. Everybody is. Everybody has some form of a red line, okay, that you would just not vote for the person. Everybody does. I mean, everyone does. Even if you're a sociopath, you have some form of a red line. Something.
Yeah, you didn't say it would be a good one, or the one you've
But
thought about very hard.
Correct, but everyone has one. Everyone has one. All right. So, and I think moving forward, okay, we're in a long, drawn out war here. This is, if I thought this election could even be like a Gettysburg tide turner, I would be much more aggressive in saying, hey, at any point in human history, there's a moment where you just got to put your chips in because this is your best shot. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
This isn't that moment. This is not that moment. I mean, this is not going to turn things around, even if we get the outcome we want. At best, it's going to buy us some time to try and then figure out how we went wrong, which I think I've got some pretty good ideas about, particularly on Sunday mornings, and then try to turn it around. This is how about let's not have thermonuclear war over Ukraine, right? This is how about we don't risk thermonuclear war over Taiwan. This is how about we just don't arrest Americans because we don't like their opinions. You see what I'm saying? I mean, this election is not Gettysburg. Okay, this is Bull Run. I mean, this is an early engagement in an all-out civil war. Okay, that's what this is. And so therefore, I want to make sure that we are not laying markers down later on that will be counterproductive to our cause. Okay? Because it is absolutely within the Christian ethic that there are societal options given to us where they're both bad. And we just have to say no. They're both bad and we just have to say no. We can't do that. That's not a part of who we are. Our kingdom is not of this world. And we should probably never, how about rarely? Let me not say never. Okay, let me account for periods of great awakenings and revivals. Okay, so let me not say never. How about rarely? It should be rare that a salty Christian and a salty Christian church feels completely at home in this world. Rare.
Then we have a huge problem.
Yes, we do. Yeah. There should be some ever-present tension. Okay. And now in some eras it's more subtle than at other times, right? Sometimes you get the knock on the door overt. All right. We're off to the camps. Sometimes it's way more subtle than that. Okay. But it should be very rare that a salty Christian in a salty Christian church feels at home in this world. We're in a negative world, which means increasingly the options for Christians will become what without revival?
Bad.
Yeah, negative. Correct. Which means increasingly the options that will be offered to us are what? Negative. I'm going to tell you right now, because we need to be thinking these things through. I do. I know a lot of you don't go to churches where your pastor encourages you, so let me do it for you. Start thinking things through. What is your red line that you can't say no to or you can't say yes to? It would violate your testimony. It would violate not just between you and your Lord, vertically, that's the most important thing. But then also you have a testimony horizontally because let's not do the opposite. I know I said last week we've taken love your neighbor as you love yourself and put it above love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Let's not just take that totally off the table, though. That's the opposite mistake. Okay? That's not holy and righteous either. The covenant between us and our neighbor horizontally matters too. While we were sinners, as we just read on Romans 5 last week, while we were sinners, Christ died for the ungodly, us, our neighbor, okay? Jesus didn't die for a theology. He died for people. He died for image bearers. There's nothing more important of value to God than people. He sent his own son to die for them. So let's not also make it look like loving our neighbors as we love ourselves is now totally irrelevant, because that's the opposite heresy. Okay? Not true. So if you're sitting there thinking to yourself, I hammered my kids for 20 years sitting at my kitchen table that abortion was bad, and that hands that shed innocent blood is the absolute worst abomination God hates. That's right out of his word, right? How can I sit here then when these guys are going soft on this issue, and now my kids are out exploring, they're asking questions, I violate my own testimony? We should be wrestling with those things. There's nothing wrong with wrestling with that. And this question kind of gets to that. All right. But I want you to know right now, any Republican who ever said they believe that a woman has a right to choose an abortion, I'd never vote for them. And I don't care what pressure I'd get. I don't care how good they'd be on everything else. I don't believe I can vote for that as a believer. Now, I'm putting that emphasis on whom? Me. Because ultimately, when I stand before the Lord at my judgment seat, Todd will be there with me to argue my case. That's how it'll work? No.
It is
no.
not.
Going to be me and the Lord. That's it. Me and the Lord. All right? So I don't believe I can vote for someone who believes a woman has a right to kill her own child. I don't believe that. A right to murder, there's no such thing as a right to murder. And given how soft this party is becoming on this issue in front of us, we aren't very far away from that a possibility emerging.
Oh yeah, we'll find out either way. Yeah.
All right. So I want to make it very clear. And these will be moments when Christians, we will argue with each other. And we have to give people one another grace and conscience. Anybody wants to say to me, how many people since Monday, July 15th, the Monday after Trump was shot and nearly assassinated, when our show went from I was always going to vote for Trump, but we were largely not day-to-day engaged in the election to, well, we are now engaged day-to-day. Okay, so since July 15th, all right, how often have I spent arguing with people who say he's not pro-life for me and pro-life enough for me, so I'm not going to vote for him? How much time have I spent arguing with those people?
Infinitesimal.
I can't even think of any.
Yeah.
Anybody who has said to me, I can't forgive him for the jab because he's not even asking for forgiveness. How much time have I spent arguing with those people?
Right.
Yeah. Or lockdowns, right?
Yeah.
Now, how much of the stuff that is in our inboxes from Christians who don't want to, and conservatives don't want to vote for Trump, how much of it is those three cases and how much of it is a bunch of this other stupid crap? Because I don't know about your inbox, but it's like 20%. And I'm being kind. It's like 20% people taking some form of moral conscience high road, and another 80% stupid trolls like the guy you let off with. Okay? Or I think it's better for Ron DeSantis 28 if Trump loses, basically. Okay? Crap like that. All right? Now, how much patience have I had for that stupid stuff? Zero. How much patience am I going to continue to have for that stupid stuff in this cycle and cycles moving forward? Zero. How much patience am I going to have for legitimate differences of conscience? Hopefully a lot. So for your pastor, are you in a state where there's an abortion amendment, a kill 'em all amendment? Can you get him activated on that? I think we need to be very careful about arguing against each other's consciences when they are based in something of conscience, even if we don't agree. All right? We need to be very careful with this because we're going to move into a zone, guys, very soon where the cultural options before us are all going to be some form of terrible without revival. This is where we're going. All right? And I think we should, again, we're not going to say love your neighbor as you love yourself is not important at all. It's the second most important thing. So it's pretty darn important, right? So start thinking ahead for you. Hey, what is something that I'd want grace on from my brethren, from my pastor? Okay? And maybe I should start offering that same grace in advance to them for when the time comes that I'm going to ask for it in return. That's all I'm saying. All right? So I don't know that that's the answer to your question that you want. But, to me, I could also say, I think unnecessary forever wars are a pro-life issue. Taking people in the prime, or taking the next generation in the prime of their lives, right as they're getting married, having the next generation of our children, and sending them off to war for no good rational cause or reason is a pro-life issue. I think making people wards of a biomedical security state is a pro-life issue. And I know Trump's record on that at the end of COVID was not very good, but I also know he's the one guy that reached out to Bobby Kennedy Jr. on this, and that's Bobby Kennedy's pet lifelong issue, okay? So if Bobby Kennedy's willing to hear out what Trump has to say and give him a shot, who am I as a newcomer to this issue to sit by and say, well, I'm better at this than Bobby Kennedy Jr. is, okay? Now, Bobby Kennedy Jr. may be wrong, and Trump may screw us on this issue when he gets in the White House, right? But if that happens, we'll deal with it then, okay? But whose credibility, with a major platform credibility, is more secure on those issues than Bobby Kennedy Jr.'s are? Nobody's. See, this is the level of nuance and analysis that we're going to have to learn to do to navigate a negative world. And nuance will lead to disagreement. And when that happens, we need to offer each other grace. Go ahead, Todd.
Well, on that front, I'm getting a fair amount. My percentage, my ratio of pro-lifers who say they can't vote for Trump is a little higher. And to that end, none of us ever thought Trump was going to be some great pro-life leader. And for whatever reason, including the sticker on the back of Steve's computer, Providence, I don't know, but Roe v. Wade was overturned. So we got more out of him than we ever thought possible. I think that's undeniable. A, for whatever reasons, maybe by accident, but it happened. So he didn't, at the very least, he didn't stand in the way. And B, whether we in this coming election on all these state referendums, and Steve can remind me how many there are on the life issue, whether we execute those right, and I'm using the term for a reason, but what we do with those opportunities is one thing. Maybe we all fail. But can we even argue the point that every single state now has a greater chance at helping life than they did before it was overturned?
It's not Trump's fault that the pro-life movement wasn't ready to take advantage of the opening he gave them. Yes.
You have a better chance because of that right now.
I mean, it seems like a weird line to draw to me.
Yeah.
I'm going to go by what a guy is saying right now to win an election and not by what he actually did when he had power after he won, okay? But again, I'm going to provide grace, okay? I'm going to provide grace. It's a weird line to me, but I'm going to provide grace because his messaging on the issue is largely abominable. And I've been saying it for about a year now, okay?
But if it's about the actual fruit, you have not a much better chance. Every single state, even New York and California. No, heck, the reddest of red states had no shot before because Roe was standing in the way. You all do now. That's real fruit. It happened.
You want to add to that? It's well said, Todd. Aaron, you want to add to that at all?
No, not really. I'll just say this. You know, I've gone through that myself where it's like I can't vote for the guy because he's basically, I mean, he is messaging pro-choice. That's the messaging that he's doing. I went through that myself, and I came to the realization that it's a little just, I don't want to cut or, split hairs here, but the pro-life, if you're just looking at this, no moral conscience whatsoever. If you're just looking at this issue in a vacuum, you're looking at it from Donald Trump's perspective. I'm trying to put the nuts and bolts together to win this election. And for the last 4 years, or last 3 years, this coalition that has supported me has been a loser over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm not making a moral statement here. I'm just looking at it, trying to look at it
from
objectively.
An art of the deal perspective.
From an art of the deal perspective.
Yep.
Why would you not message differently than Donald Trump? And I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm not saying that's a morally right thing. I'm just trying to look at it from his perspective.
You're making an excellent point. I want to elaborate on it when we come back. Well, as we have seen, and like every presidential debate this cycle and previous ones, the media is no longer just biased. It's trying to control the narrative. All right. And now is a time that we need antidotes. And we're trying to be that antidote here at Blaze Media. While mainstream outlets distort and deceive, Blaze Media is committed to delivering truth for those who love and are fighting for the American way of life. We refuse to be controlled or silenced. Like last year when we gave up Google AdSense, that's a lot of revenue we gave up. 7 digits we gave up so that we don't have to be censored anymore. All right. So at a time when media manipulations are at their peak, we need independent platforms like Blaze TV. They are more crucial than ever before. And we're here to challenge these narratives and provide real, unfiltered coverage that puts you in control. That's why right now we're offering our biggest discount yet, $40 off an annual subscription to The Blaze. If you love this show and you support what we do here at Blaze Media, this is the biggest discount ever, $40 off an annual subscription right now at blazetv.com/Deace. And use the code DACE40 at checkout to join the movement. That's code DACE40 at checkout to join the movement at blazetv.com/Deace. blazetv.com/Deace. Use code DACE40 at checkout to join the movement. America deserves the truth. You deserve the truth. We here at The Blaze, we want to bring it to you. All right, so blazetv.com/Deace, code DACE40 for the big discount on your subscription. All right, Aaron, I want to go back and reset something you just said, okay? Because we are not in a position of hegemony in this culture, which means if we want to have cultural impact at some point in time, we will have to join a coalition and make accommodations. All right. At some point in time, we did everything we could when we made Nefarious. My company put up the money for the movie. We made it with hardcore believers. We hired people that as much as we could that shared our value system. But in the end, we couldn't make that unanimous because there's not a critical mass of people in Hollywood that can make a movie. Just forget directing or writing it, shooting it, staffing it, key gripping it, best boying it, sound editing it. You see what I'm saying? That infrastructure does not exist in total. And so we were opened up to having to hire people that are good at this that don't share our value system. And then some of them tried to screw us by striking our movie and trying to get it canceled and stopped from being made. We had to pay that cost. We had to give money to companies like AMC Theaters that do not share our values at all. But we had to let them make more money off our movie than we did. Otherwise, it wasn't going to get into their theaters. That's just the reality of living in a negative world. We did everything we could to make sure the message would be uncompromising, but we don't control the distribution process, and we had to make all kinds of accommodations along the way to make the movie possible for millions to see it. You see what I'm trying to say? Mm-hmm. All right. Now, you may make the decision. That's exactly why I'm never going to put a movie in theaters, and I'm just going to put it on a platform like a PureFlix or what other people are trying to develop right now for Christians. And great, cool, do that. I know from talking to people at EWTN that they're talking about trying to do more original content there. I'm all for that. Okay. But that also means that will be more of a limited scope of people you'll be able to reach, which is cool. But understand, in a negative world, some choices will have to be made. You may make the choice, I want this in front of the broadest audience possible. Therefore, I'll bite the bullet and align with some people that I don't fully agree with. God bless you. If you're not compromising your witness, I hope it works. You may make the decision, I don't want to give any more of my money to these people. So even if it limits the reach, okay, then I'm going to use this as an opportunity to help build up infrastructure that may one day compete with them. God bless you too. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Grace here, living in a negative world. We have to learn to give each other grace in a negative world. Not grace over, well, actually, I'm pretty confident Jesus wants me to tap the secretary I'm not married to. That's not what I'm saying. No, that's not what we mean by grace. I mean, when our consciences are aligned with, our overall conscience is aligned with our Lord. And now we're trying to figure out, in a fallen world, when we are sinners, how do we execute his game plan? Okay? There's lots of ways to win a football game, right? You can win with an air raid. You can win with a wishbone, right? Right now, if you look at the top 25 in college football, we have the service academies are simultaneously ranked for the first time since 1960. They're playing a different style of football than what teams in the Big Ten and the SEC play, but they're winning their games too, right? There's lots of different ways to skin a cat. What they're not each allowed to do, though, is decide, well, for us, touchdowns will be worth more than the other team. See what I'm saying? There's certain fundamentals they can't violate, but aside from the fundamentals, they can choose to go about their business however they think is best to exploit their particular situation for the most good. See where I'm going with this? Mm-hmm. All right. There is a sell price. I have a sell price. I didn't vote for McCain or Romney. And I think history has proven me to be correct on those. First time I didn't vote for Trump. And then as I watched history unfold, I thought, okay, I think I might be wrong on this one. Because I looked at what he actually did. The whole faith without works is dead thing. I looked at what he actually did, and it was way better than I thought. So I voted for him the second time. It's what we saw him do is way better than what the people in charge are doing to us right now. So I'm already going to make sure I've got to be in Dallas for the election. So I'm going to make sure I vote absentee and vote now. Okay. So I vote for him a second. Well, it's a third time for some of you, second time for me. Okay. But I have sell prices. And as Christians, we should always have sell prices. We should always anticipate there's abominations of desolation that we have to refuse. And this world and the ruler of this present darkness looks for opportunities to push those things on us, okay? If you're like, I just can't do it, I can't navigate that, I'm not going to argue with you then. I'm going to give you grace. Just provide those of us who think we can, give us the same grace. That's all. Which I don't see happening very often, by the way.
That part is...
The grace kind of goes one way, okay? But I'm going to still give grace anyway, even if it goes one way, okay? But in this case, I think that the amount of righteousness that can be done by Trump and Vance winning, and not just in comparison to the unrighteousness we're up against, but like standalone righteousness, not wasting a generation of young men to die for nothing in Ukraine, I think is a righteous stance. Or anywhere else for that matter, I think is a righteous stance. Not having any more stories like Lake and Riley, I think is a righteous stance. Before we even get to the sliding comparison scale of what the two options are. So, when you're in that coalition and you're aligned with people that don't share your value system completely, then what Aaron said at the end of the last segment is very important. Trump is a financier and a damned good one. He built a global empire. And here's the thing even most impressive is it's fallen apart multiple times. He's been broke a couple different times. And he's built it back up each and every time. And the Christians are like a department in this coalition to Trump. What happens when one department isn't performing as good as other departments? When you have the next department meeting, is that the department that is given the deference to? The one that's underperforming? Is that the one that's given the deference to? No. And by golly, we are underperforming. We got our asses kicked in Michigan. We got our asses kicked in Ohio. We may be getting our asses kicked in every state other than Florida come election day, including Missouri. Might get our asses kicked in all of them. When the guy running your corporation looks at you and your department's the one that keeps sucking on the P&L statement over and over again, that's not the time to go in and ask for a raise, G. That's not the time. That's the time to actually look around and be thankful any of you still have your phony baloney jobs. That's where we are. Now, you may have a position that says, I don't want to be a part of something like that. Cool. You'll get no argument out of me if your conscience says I don't want to be a part of something like that. Just understand then, though, the alternative you think exists does not exist. This alternative Republican Party that used to exist never did, or at least didn't since 1988, before anybody on this stage could vote. And I would urge you, therefore, to find other means and methods by which you can serve the kingdom, because there's plenty of other ways to serve and fight against the culture war than voting in an election.
Way, you have to.
I fully expect you to be at your next school board meeting then. Take all the energy that you can't devote into this election, okay, because it's just too unseemly for you, and I fully expect you to be investing that in, and who's your county board of supervisors then, right? I mean, that energy should be redirected then, places where you could have dominion, and your conscience will be clear.
Yes.
Rather than just, I'm Florida Dad 4412, I'm Defiant Baptist 69 me. Posting on X over and 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 over again the same damn things over and over and over again. Please send us film of you at the school board meeting reading the Riot Act. Please send that over.
We've been telling people to do that for 2 years. We'll put it on.
Please send us you at the next library board as they put the porn in the libraries. Please show us the video where you got off X to remind us just how pious you were, and you let them have some of that holiness that's just emanating from you. You let them touch the hem of your garment. Just let us see it. And maybe you do. And guess what argument you'll get from me if you do? None. God bless you. Hey, man. Cool. But if you're not going to be a part of this election, you're not going to take part. This is the only front on the culture war we have. Is just that. Nothing else is happening. There's no other battlefronts anywhere, really, because you're needed. So cool. Redirect that energy elsewhere. Then you're needed on the battlefront. Go somewhere elsewhere. Then go somewhere else where you don't have to possibly stain yourself with the name Trump. Go there. Just how often do you see these people there? Not very often.
I didn't see many when I was doing it.
No, you don't see them there very often. Some of them you do. I know some of them, and they're in the fight. God bless them. But most of them you don't. But right now, we don't have clout in this coalition, and it's our own fault. If you're seeing things just from a purely technocratic art of the deal perspective, as Trump does, like Aaron pointed out, you're looking at the landscape thinking, I gave these Christian leaders everything they wanted. Everything they asked of me, I gave it to them. And I turn right around and I watch them poop the bed and their own drawers every fight that's happened since they got it. Why in the world would I subject myself to these people when it's prison or get elected or prison for me?
He thinks
it's
you're
prison or get elected.
He thinks you're Mike Pence, and he's not wrong to think that, quite frankly.
If you're Donald Trump, it's Rikers Island or 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and I'm going to put my trust in Ralph Reed, Mike Pence. Probably not, right? I'm probably going to go full Thanos, put the gauntlet on my own hand and say, fine, I'll do it myself. That's probably what you're going to think. I'm better at this than you are. All right, you guys need me more than I need you. That's probably exactly what he thinks, because that's exactly how he's behaving. Tell me what evidence we could possibly provide to him for him not to think this way. What evidence would that be? Oh, wait. 12 minutes left in the show. No, I'm sorry. 5 minutes left in the show. Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Such evidence doesn't exist.
One of the most productive Christians in America right now is a girl who's been on the scene for like 2 years, and it took a dude jumping in the pool next to her for it to happen, and that's Riley Gaines. And she's filling a vacuum with a lot of dads who have stood by and just clapped like seals. So that's, yes, to make Steve's point another way. There's opportunities everywhere to take it back at the local level and not have to worry at all about the federal.
Then get off Twitter.
Yes.
Stop. Being the know-it-alls from the Muppets there and on the mezzanine. Get the hell off Twitter and your anonymous account and get to your school board meeting, dude. And get to your city council meeting.
Take it back.
By all means. If you're not taking part, then you've got all kinds of energy then. All right? You can redirect that into something other than reminding everybody just how much more pious you are than everyone else. Show us you are. Show it to us. How often were you the only dude at those school board meetings in Carlisle, Iowa, brother?
All the time.
Yeah. Yep. You know why we got Moms for Liberty? Because we got a bunch of the Anon dads who are too good for school here never show up.
Right.
That's exactly what happens. Yeah. So let's do one more.
Let's go to this one. Tammy Richards says, how do we have peace in our families when the political divisions are so strong? The pain and anger is so real. I was just reading this account from one of Tim Pool's producers. He and his, I think, wife just had a baby. They went to visit family in California. Said a relative interrupted, called him a Russian asset, said he was going to be a terrible father, this and that.
Oh, my gosh.
And then he quote tweeted that just now. That account was from September. He quote tweeted and said, that was my sister.
Oh, my gosh.
I give you biblical comfort. You can't.
You can't.
Yep.
You can't.
It was promised.
This in the digital age. This is the stuff of the blue and the gray in the digital age. Okay. We're in a civil war. It's a cold one, but it's a civil war nevertheless. All right, and it's sad. You know, if you're a believer, don't let your behavior be the reason why these divisions happen. Let your character be the reason why. See what I'm saying? Those are two different things. Don't be, hey, I memed and trolled the pagans better than they can. Don't let that be the reason why ranks are broken. Don't be that. But if the ranks are going to be broken, and they will, let it be your character and integrity. That's the reason why. And in these kinds of times, that's the best we can do. That it wasn't us that broke the compact. We're just being exactly who we told you we were going to be and what we were going to stand for the entire time. And then when you were confronted with that, you're the one that did that breaking, but it wasn't us. It wasn't because we mistreated you or anything of that nature. That's Sermon on the Mount stuff. So that even amongst the pagans, your character shines through. But ultimately, as Todd said, we can't, and we never could. And for a couple hundred years in this country, it felt like we could because we had the first culture fully inspired in its founding and inception by Christianity. But we don't have that culture anymore. We're in a post-Christian culture now. And even then, we didn't bat 1,000, okay? Even though we didn't bat 1,000. We had our issues even then. But now the issues are systemic and cosmic. So we can't. Another reason to provide one another as much grace as we can. Because audiences like this are going to have to be surrogate friends and surrogate families for one another within these kinds of communities moving forward. A man's own household, Jesus said, will turn against him. And we're in those kinds of times now. That's life in a negative world. That'll do it for today's show. We're going to stick around and do overtime for Blaze TV subscribers. For the rest of you, we will see you tomorrow, noon to 2 Eastern, right after Glenn Beck, right here on Blaze TV. Until then, Romans 8:28.